I'm going to play some more ReVengeance. I would play the game more often, but the only way to access the mod is on Steam, and unfortunately, whenever I play on Steam, the resolution of the recording You know what? Forget about the resolution. Nothing is going to stop me from showcasing how cool this level is. This is the Iron Challenge of the second level of the Halloween mini-campaign, and as you can see, there's one of every single tower type in the game, all at once in the same level. This is a perfect example of why the ReVengeance mod is so special. The real Ironhide developers would go pretty crazy with some of their Iron Challenges too, but the ReVengeance mod takes it up to 11, and it's always in such an interesting and fun way. But that's not all. If you look at the wave composition, there are also new enemies. Mummy, in slightly larger font than the rest, and Mummy Raw. And as you can see in the other waves, every other enemy is available here too. Luckily though, we have every tower available to deal with every situation possible. The problem is that we don't have enough gold to level up everything, and these towers can't do much at level 1. So, we have to choose carefully. I'm investing in mages on the bottom, and that's because I'm using Jigu. What's really neat about this challenge is how much your hero does and doesn't matter. Because I picked Jigu, I don't have to invest gold in towers that stall or deal area damage. He can take care of that for me. If I picked a different hero, I might be spending my gold differently. But it doesn't matter which hero I pick when it comes to winning. As long as I play to that hero's strengths and invest gold in the towers that fill in the gaps, I will still win. That's a sign of a well-made challenge. Speaking of well-made, let's talk about the changes made to Jigu. His hero spell is now an instantaneous burst of damage, to help it stand out from other hero spells. Plus, it doesn't overlap as much with his own abilities, since Jigu already has 2 skills that stop enemies in their tracks, one being his Ice Breath, and the other being his Abominable Stomp. This ability only has 4 stomps now, and that's because it used to have a major weakness in having a 30-second cooldown. That prevented it from being able to stall enemies that consistently. He would get to stall them once with that skill, and then, for 30 seconds, he would just let enemies leak. By the way, I just want to point out here that Gobblerangs are able to shoot outside of their range. As long as an enemy is in their range, the AoE will extend slightly past that range. And I highlighted that there with the Mummy Raw that was getting hit outside of the Gobblerang's range. But anyways, the Stomp ability now has a shorter cooldown, meaning that he can keep on stalling enemies for longer, making it more versatile. Even if it has the same DPS now, I consider this to be a massive buff to the skill. I would actually take a skill with lower DPS, as long as it wasn't that much lower, if it meant that it could get a faster cooldown for the ability, because that versatility is actually really helpful. But now I need to move Jigu to the top of the map where the liches are. They've been buffed to spawn 2 haunted skeletons at a time, but they've also been nerfed to have safe nodes, so they can't spawn anything until they're a certain distance down the path. You can see that Jigu has to walk all the way to the far left instead of blocking the lich he's closest to, and that's because Vengeance has an unfixable problem with melee engagement. So it makes blocking enemies within their safe nodes harder and more annoying to do. MMLH designed this stage, and I already know he has an obsession with forcing this tactic out of the player. That's why the Swamp Thing is all the way at the entrance. You're meant to switch to melee mode to block that lich. I should make it clear though that I'm not bothered by this wave design. Even though it's unfortunate that even the mod can't fix the broken melee engagement rules in the code isn't so broken that it's unplayable. For me, micro in these games always felt like cheating. It was an optional way to give your tower setup some leeway to be less optimal. But it's increasingly common now for proper micro to be necessary in order to win. That's a weird feeling for me, but not a bad one. It just depends on the game's tower design. In Kingdom Rush Origins and the vanilla Vengeance, it was a lot more difficult to use any of the towers properly because it didn't feel like they had a clear role. In Origins, the mages just feel like crud, and that's because every enemy and their mother in that game has some sort of resistance, armor or magic resistance. Arcane Archers are able to deal with either of those 2 resistances because they can deplete magic resistance and deal magic damage with burst arrows. Then you have Barracks and Artillery, which both can deal true damage consistently, so mages who are stuck with magic damage only just feel really bad in comparison. But at the same time, both of those mages deal magic damage to multiple enemies. You want to use Ward of Disruption from the Wild Mages on multiple enemies because it can work on up to 6 of them at a time, and you also have AoE from Eldritch Doom, and then you have the High Elven Mage, which can trap multiple enemies at a time, so it loses efficiency if it's not hitting multiple, and also it splits its bolts, so it can attack multiple enemies too. So when you're dealing with multiple enemies that have armor, it's really difficult to pick which one of those you want to use, because both mages fill kind of the same role. And in Vengeance, it's just that story again and again with every single tower comparison you can make. Like, why would you use the Orc Shaman over the Infernal Mage? Any differences that they might have between each other are negligible because those differences are really bad. Healing Roots, terrible. Infernal Portal, terrible. You have an expensive form of AoE on both towers, and then it's just some sort of magic damage from either one. So, thankfully the roles in this game are a lot more well defined, so you actually know what you want to do here. You could argue that it makes the game easier, but because I think it also makes the game more fun, it's still preferable in my opinion. And the game has its own challenges too, and I'm looking forward to showcasing those really challenging ones later. But for now,